Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, a French journalist spent 2 years in captivity in Mali after the French military reportedly tried to use him to track down a jihadist leader. A joint investigation accuses the forces of not doing enough to prevent Olivier Dubois' abduction. Also, a scientifically backed report finds that big oil extraction in Nigeria's Bayelsa state has come at a devastating long-term cost to lives, livelihoods, and the environment. Investigators say that Shell and Eni should foot most of the $12 billion cleanup bill. And Washington says it will hold attackers in Nigeria accountable after 4 people are killed in a raid on a U.S. convoy in the southeast. A hunt for 3 people who were abducted is also underway. But first, the French army has been accused of trying to piggyback on a journalist's arrangements to interview a jihadist commander in Mali, but then doing little to stop the reporter's eventual abduction. Olivier Dubois was abducted in April 2021 and was only released in March. Monty Francis has more.
It was the end of a nightmare for French journalist Olivier Dubois when he stepped off of a plane back in March. Kidnapped in Mali and held for 2 years, an investigation by French media now suggests it's a nightmare that might have been avoided. The report points the finger at the French military, and more precisely at its Operation Barkhane forces in the Sahel. The army had been informed in April 2021 that the reporter was planning to meet with jihadist leader Abdallah al-Bakai for an interview, a commander in the al-Qaeda affiliate Nusrat al-Islam. Dubois was in touch with an intermediary known as Qatar, who had been collaborating with the jihadist group, but was also supplying the French military with intelligence. Qatar provided Dubois with an official invitation letter from the terrorist group. Additionally, he said its leader had agreed to finance Dubois' travel and hotel after a number of French media outlets rejected his pitch on the grounds it was too dangerous. Barkhane forces had intended to use the interview to locate the jihadist leader, but abandoned plans at the last minute for security reasons. An internal army investigation said the situation had been poorly assessed.
There was no misconduct on the part of the Barkhane forces, but the sensitivity of the matter was not sufficiently taken into account, so as to lead to a deterrent action regarding the journalist.
Despite the high threat level, the French army denies its role was to dissuade the journalist from conducting the interview, and the French embassy said Dubois was sent a message warning him of the risks.
Well, big oil companies have failed spectacularly with regards to decades of devastating spills in the oil-producing Bayelsa state in Nigeria. A new report slammed energy giants who've exploited the Niger Delta's natural resources at a devastating local cost. The Bayelsa State Oil and Environmental Commission, or BSOEC, reckons that the cleanup cost is at least $12 billion, will take 12 years, and has said that the subsidiaries of the UK's Shell and Italy's Eni should pay the lion's share of costs. Levels of pollutants in the soil, water, air and blood of residents were astronomically high. BSOEC has also called for sweeping reforms to oil and gas regulation in the US, UK, Europe and Nigeria. King Bubaraye Dakolo leads the state's Council of Traditional Rulers, and he speaks to me now. Thank you so much, Your Majesty.
Thank you.
There is very little likelihood that the oil companies are going to pay up that $12 million that the Commission reckons is going to take to clean up Bayelsa State. So for you, what do the findings mean for the people of Bayelsa, practically or otherwise?
Well, first, I'm not surprised that the oil companies will take that type of position, because they are conscienceless. But I'm happy that they've blinded the world for so long, and this report is exposing them for who they are. And we'll go at all lengths, particularly as community people, go at all lengths, including legal if necessary. And I believe that with this report out there, there are 1 or 2 persons of conscience who will hold them accountable and compel them to do what is supposed to be done. I believe that, yes, there are situations where people have lost legal battles, no doubt, but with a compendium like this, with this type of report, I believe that any court anywhere in the world will rule against them, and then so it will be better for them to do the needful by paying it's not necessarily paying the money, but using such monies to ensure that the cleaning up is done, because we have to have our environment back.
So we were talking earlier, and you were saying just how much scientific and empirical evidence is contained within this report. Just give me a sense of what, for you, were the biggest takeaways from the Commission's findings.
Well, first and foremost, for instance, they have corroborated what we've always known. Like I said before, the world has been blinded by the IOCs because they've used all their humongous profits to be campaigning, blinding the world that they've been following things ethically. But this report has shown that they've been unethical, they've been double standard. What they don't do in Aberdeen and Houston, they do in Nigeria. And so this report is showing clearly that they've been criminal, they've been insincere to the people of the Niger Delta. They've been causing the deaths of scores of children and women and all for so long, and then destroyed the ecosystem for so long. So this report reveals all of that, showing who they truly are to their families in England and everywhere else, that these persons who go to work in Africa, even though they pretend to be good in England and in Italy, but back in Bayelsa State, they are savages.
So what you're pointing out that you believe that there's a double standard when both morally and ethically in the way that they work. And also you were mentioning that one of the findings suggests that the number of spills in Bayelsa State come to about one a day, 350 every year. What did Shell and Eni have to say for themselves when confronted by these kinds of figures? And what was the Commission's response to Shell and Eni's reaction?
Well, first and foremost, Eni and Shell have been around there for about 70 years. They've made so much money. They are so rich that they use their money. They weaponize the poverty of the people and tell lies against the people. What happens in Nigeria today, if there's a spill right now, the first thing that Shell, for instance, will do is to say the spill was caused by a local person. And we've never seen a local person that has caused sabotage or has caused spillage all this while. But that is what they will first of all say, and then try as much as possible to delay even the cleaning up or delay even the plugging, not cleaning up, plugging of that particular damage. Because the more the oil comes out, the more the damage, the better for them. As a matter of fact, they orchestrate these spillages by paying people to do these damages, because at the end of the day, they get millions of dollars in clamping this spillages. That is what they've been doing.
So that's some very disturbing, quite inflammatory allegations. How can the findings of this commission help hold big oil companies to account, and even national regulators, because they were also named in the Commission's concerns?
Yes, the national regulators have been pocketed by Eni and Shell for so long, so they've been regulating nothing more or less. They use the oil company facilities to do the monitoring, do the regulation, so they don't quite regulate in the real sense. So these companies are rich, and they ensure that nothing about them is told. So spillages, they just try to parry and then tell a lie about it. So definitely they're going to lie. But with a book like this, with scientific evidence and the rest of them, I believe that the world will know that they are lying, and they will be put at the spot, and they will be compelled to ensure that they restore the environment they've damaged for so long.
Thank you so much, Your Majesty, King Bubaraye Dakola, the head of the State Council of Traditional Rulers in Bayelsa State, Nigeria.
Thank you so much.
Now, staying with Nigeria, Washington says that it's going to do all it can to track down those behind an attack on a U.S. convoy in Nigeria in which 4 people were killed. All the victims were Nigerian. 3 people were also reportedly abducted during Tuesday's raid in Anambra State. Samuel Okoye has more.
Just to reiterate,
the police say a manhunt has been launched to apprehend the gunmen who killed 2 staff of the U.S. consulate and 2 of their security personnel in Anambra State. 2 other policemen and a driver remained missing after the gunmen abducted them. It is an incident that has generated reaction from Nigeria to the United States, with top officials of both countries condemning the attack. Those killed and abducted are Nigerians, but the attack is bound to generate concerns among foreign diplomats in Nigeria about the danger of road travels in volatile parts of the country, including the southeast region where the incident happened. Similar attacks have been carried out on high-profile targets like politicians and businessmen in Anambra and other southeastern states in the past. The Nigerian government says the separatist group, the Indigenous People of Biafra, IPOB, is responsible for the attacks. But IPOB denies this allegation, saying the attacks are state-sponsored. IPOB says the attacks are aimed at discrediting its struggle for an independent state of Biafra. These latest killings in southeast Nigeria happened on the same day gunmen shot dead 30 people in the central part of the country, following a tussle over fertile land. Both incidents from different parts of Nigeria highlight the growing insecurity in the country.
Samuel Okoye there for us. Now, in Sudan, battling between the Sudanese army and the Rapid Support Forces paramilitary group continues. Since the start of the war a little over a month ago, more than 20,000 people have crossed into Ethiopia. Our team reports from Metema, where aid teams are struggling to cope with the sudden wave of arrivals.
The Ethiopian border, a finish line towards safety. 600 refugees arrive each day. Among them, many Sudanese, including Sliman and his friends.
The soldiers of Hemeti arrived and stayed where we were living. It got difficult because the army's planes were bombing and flying over our area in the morning and in the afternoon. Our lives were at risk.
The war broke out suddenly in mid-April, forcing people to escape from one day to the other without money and carrying with them the bare minimum. A long and clandestine journey, the Sudanese military is increasingly reluctant to let young people and men travel towards the border. Here, the United Nations Refugee Agency is taking charge. A transit center for asylum seekers has just been set up.
All the necessary services are offered on site. We're just getting started, and it seems chaotic and difficult, but we do our best to welcome everyone in decent conditions.
Out of the 3,000 refugees asking for international protection, 500 have been relocated to this temporary shelter. 75% of them are Eritreans who previously had refugee status in Sudan. Jonas was about to move to Canada before the war broke out.
I was living in Khartoum and was following the process for refugees for a while. It took a long time, 6 years, and all of a sudden this whole disaster happened. Just as I was finally completing the process, the war started.
The man has just arrived. This is the room that he'll be sharing with 10 other Sudanese. They'll have to wait here for months, maybe years.
My dream was to get my degree and finish my master's. I was completing a degree in psychology, and my dream was to finish my studies, find a job, and start working.
It's difficult for them to imagine the future. After a month of conflict, the war in Sudan continues with truce negotiations showing few signs of success.
Well, that's it for Eye on Africa. Thanks for joining us. Do so again. Till then, take care.